Hello, everybody. We are back again with part two of Look to God and Not the Messenger. If you missed part one, go look at part one and see what God has to say to you in that message. Part two, we're going to be talking about God chooses and qualifies his messenger. And this is so important to remember, y'all, because sometimes we can get in our flesh when we're going through things. And this is what we talked about in part one. We can get in our flesh when we're going through things and then thinking that when God sends somebody to us or somebody come in the name of the Lord, that they have to meet certain qualifications, our requirements, our qualifications that we set up for them or whoever we think ought to come to us. But that's not how it works. God qualifies. And one point, as I'm reading through and trying to figure out what God is trying to teach me before I bring it to you, one thing that God says is that he does not call the qualified, but he qualifies who he calls. And that's important to remember, not just for those who are receiving messages from people, but for those who are messengers to God, for God. It's important to know that if he call you, he qualifies you. He doesn't always call the people that look great. He doesn't always call the people that's educated. He doesn't always call the people that has a certain stance and confidence and ready to do that. He doesn't really, God always call the underdog, the one that feels like they cannot do it. He always called the underdog, the one that we feel like can't do it, the one that we might feel less than in the flesh. So we're going to get into this. And one person that I want to use, for example, is Moses. And I was thinking about Moses this morning and how Moses was one of the ones that was an underdog. But he didn't appear to be an underdog at first because he was raised and rolling with the people of Egypt. He was raised in Pharaoh's house. He grew up fortunate. He grew up not being a slave. He didn't know what it took to be a slave, but he knew what it took to have people in slavery. He knew all the back ends and everything. So he didn't look like an underdog at first. But God started to change because he had purpose for Moses. So when Moses had a calling on his life, because he had this powerful calling on his life, God changed Moses. He changed his entire life. And it came to the point to where he found out who he was, that he was a child of God, that he was an Israelite. So when all these things start to break loose, Moses had to go through 40 years of wilderness before God could use him because he had to purge Egypt out of Moses. But the thing is, God wanted to make Moses a witness. God wanted to make him a messenger. And then after God used or dealt with Moses, convicted him, and changed him, he sent him to Pharaoh to be a messenger for God. Now check this out. Pharaoh was not a believer of God. Pharaoh served his own God. He did not discern. He wasn't walking in the Holy Spirit. So I just want us to think about this because although Pharaoh was not a child of God and he wasn't walking in the Spirit, he was still held accountable for the word that came to him. And I feel like a lot of us need to hear this because just because you excuse the messenger God sent to you, or just because you didn't agree with the word that God is sending to you through that mouthpiece, doesn't mean that word is excused. It means that you are still held accountable for what God has to say to you. You're still held accountable to be obedient to what he's saying. And let's get into this qualification. When you think of a messenger, see, everybody ain't anointed to give you a word. Everybody is not called to give you that word of a deliverance. We can hear encouraging words and that's good and everything, but there are certain words that we hear that is a rhema word. That's that word that comes and it brings a change about in our lives. And God has certain people that may come and bring that rhema word to you. And guess what? When you thinking they not qualified, they qualify. How do God qualify us? Because he take us through trials and tribulations. He take us through the trenches so we can be prepared for therefore those messengers can be prepared to bring that word forth to us when the time is right. And it's up to us to listen. It's up to us to receive. So when you think about these qualifications, although you looking for, oh, how long they been preaching for, oh, how long they been ministering for, oh, what kind of education they got, oh, what kind of finances they got. So while we looking at that, God is saying, I had that person in the trenches. And even though you feel like their situation doesn't relate to yours, it relates, because the same way this person walked through the valleys and all these things, got through their situation, this is the same way you're going to get through your situation. But you have to listen, and you have to take heed to what God is saying to you. So when God calls you to be a messenger, and when God calls somebody to bring a message to you, you better know that they qualified. And they ain't just qualified just by saying, yes, Lord, I'll do it. They're qualified because of the trials and tribulations that they had to endure. They're qualified because the same thing that you're struggling through, that same lesson God's trying to teach you, they received the answer. They received understanding. So these are the people that you want to be helping you. Even when you're like, Lord, I can do this myself. I can go to the therapist. You can go to the therapist, but you better find one. Be in communication with God to see who He wants to speak to you, who He wants to cover you, who He wants to minister to you. It's not all about how we feel and, ooh, they just seem or appear to be right. We need to be in communication with God so we can know where to go, know who to talk to, know what God is saying to us. Get out our own way. And we talked about leaning to our own understanding in the first message. So I just wanted to talk about that and just put emphasis on even those that feel discouraged to get on social media, wherever you gotta go, going up to people. Anytime God calls you to be a messenger, you don't feel qualified. But it's not about your feelings, it's about your life. It's about the things that God has been instilling in you and those fruits that He's been building in you. And even when somebody comes to you, we already talked about, sometimes it might be a stranger and they may bring one or two words and nothing else after that. But in those moments, you pray and you ask God, what do I need to know? What do you need me to pull? What do you need me to see? It's not all about your own understanding, okay? It's about what God is doing in us, because y'all, we've been praying some prayers. We've been asking God to do some things in our lives, and then we've been encountering things. It seems like we've been encountering the same old thing, and we're waiting for a deliverance and we're waiting for the blessings, but God is not always gonna tell you, because when you in your flesh, you can't hear. So sometimes he may tell you, but you're not gonna hear it. You may not hear it depending on where you are. So He'll send people for confirmation. He'll send people to tell you things that you need to hear. So anyway, I just wanted to give you all an encouraging word, and just remember, look to God, not the messenger. And when God sends you, that person is qualified and anointed. When God sends a messenger, that person is qualified and anointed to bring you that word, okay? And then when He called you, you are qualified and anointed to do whatever he called you to do with His message. So just remember that. Follow me if you want to hear more. Also, let me know if you need prayer, whatever you need, prayer or encouragement, let me know. I'm here. We're here to be helpers one to the other. My name is Pastor Quay. God bless you. You have a wonderful day.